Thanks for all of you that came. We have so many of our community that are traveling over the 4th of July. We are so glad we're not on the road and out in that. Glad to have all of you here. You are God's, every one of you. You are God's children of the Most High, all of you. I think a lot of times that we hear that and we don't really know what that means. We don't claim it. We limp through life. We waddle is the thing I read about the ducks frequently, instead of soaring like we can do. I want to read to you from John 10. Jesus says, I have come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. I am the good shepherd, and a good shepherd risks his life for the sake of his sheep. I have other sheep also, which are not of this fold. Them too I must bring, and they will hear my voice, and all the sheep will become one flock and one shepherd. The Jews were saying to Jesus that they were going to stone him to death, not because of his good works, but because he said he was a God. He said he was God's son. And they called that blasphemy. So they were going to stone him to death. And they said, while you're only a man, you make yourself God, and you say, you are the Son of God. And Jesus replied to this accusation by stating that their own laws, the Mosaic laws, say that they are God's too. And he says, is it not written in your own law, I said, you are God's? Why do one whom the Father sent to the world himself, do you say, you blaspheme just because I say to you, I am the Son of God? Jesus was referring to the 82nd Psalm in the Old Testament. I have said that you are God's, all of you children of the Most High. So Jesus was saying it and then referring to the Old Testament. Now, this is what I find so fascinating, and those of you that have studied the Edgar Cayce readings will find this has so much more meaning. One of Jesus' lifetimes, according to the Cayce readings, and in the book by Glenn Sandifer, The Lives of the Master, which is excellent, says that this is a psalm of Asaph, and Asaph was an incarnation of Jesus. And so Jesus was writing the very thing that he quoted when he was Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus, according to the Cayce readings, had 33 lives. That was just one of them. And from the Cayce readings, Asaph was a master musician in the house of God for King David and King Solomon. You know, they attribute most of the Psalms to David, but the 82nd Psalm is Asaph writing that. He was blessed with the gift of prophecy, and it would be reflected in his writings, including some of the Psalms of the Bible. He was a man of intense faith that extended far beyond his lifetime, and after he died, a musical guild would continue for generations and be known as the Sons of Asaph. He was that well known as a musician. Now, all of the versions of the Bible say exactly the same thing. You are God's children of the Most High. The New International Version, the Aramaic says that, the King James Version, they all say exactly the same thing. Not you are godly, but you are God's children of the Most High. And so maybe we can start claiming that, since this is the 4th of July, our Independence Day from Britain, we can make this our Independence Day from lacking in the way we think and claim some of the gifts that we've been promised and given. The word gods in the Hebrew is Elohim, and that's singular and plural, and it means very powerful. You are gods. All of you, children of the Most High, you are very powerful, each one of you. And you need to claim that power. I looked online to see what kind of discussion was going online and Google and all that kind of stuff about this very quote, you are God's, children of the Most High. And here is what born-again Christian preacher preaches. The next time you hear some biscuit head leading God's people astray by calling them gods, stand up and get mad and start casting devils out, for these are false teachers and are on their way to hell if they don't repent for distorting God's word. Yet all the scriptures say exactly the same thing. However, Here's a more positive one. It would not be blasphemy to say that you were the Son of God, nor to say that you were God. How could it be if God himself said that you are also God's? And he says, how long, he's quoting the whole 82nd Psalm and explaining how he feels it is. And he says, how long will you not be fair to people? How long will you say that the godless are right? Be fair and give help to people that are weak, children with dead parents, people that are poor, anyone that has nothing. Make the poor people safe and give them the help they need. Take them away from the power of the godless. They, the godless, know nothing and they understand nothing. They walk around in darkness. The ground beneath them moves about. I, God, however, say, you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. Every single one of you are God's. Most of the things online say we have no idea who wrote the 82nd Psalm, but we know who wrote the 82nd Psalm. Edgar Casey got that. So I have a question for myself and for each of you. If we truly believe we're created by God, and God calls us God, his children of the Most High, and Jesus said, the things I do, you can do, and greater things than these, and tells us over and over again that God loves us with an everlasting love, are we then claiming and acting our godness? Are we living the lives of a God being? Any of us? And if we aren't, why aren't we? And if any of you are, just tune me out for the rest of this talk. This is for me and all you God beings that have forgotten who you are and are not getting about your godness. And for those of us who are asleep, or somewhat asleep, to who we really are, God's children of the Most High. We have to say that and believe it. What do you think might be the number one thing a God being would be doing? If you're a God being, what do you think the number one thing that you, as a God being, might be doing? Well, I'll tell you what I think. I thought about this, I prayed about it, I meditated about it, and most of you know I talk with God. Many of you do too, and I know, and I love hearing the things that you get. I talk to God and my angels and my guides, and here's what they said. God beings create. That is their major function. God beings were created to create and co-create with God. God created us and gave us the gift of free will to co-create with him, her, all that there is, whatever name. It's just easier to say he or she, so you can wrap your mind around that. So we began creating when we were born. We cried and we created someone to come change our diapers. We cried and we created someone to come and feed us. We cried and we created an energy of someone to come and hold us, if we were lucky. If we weren't lucky, we didn't have all of that. Nobody comforted us. Nobody fed us. Nobody took care of us like we were created to have that kind of care. And out of our own pain, if that happened with us, we grew and created our own pain, and we created pain for others. Hurt people hurt people. It's just that way. If you were brought up being hurt, you will hurt people, unless you come to a greater awareness not to do that. I was also told that each thought creates. If it's a good thought, it creates good. If it's an ugly or mean thought, it creates that. The Casey readings say, and I have read this all these years that I've studied Casey, since the 70s, mind is the builder, the physical is the result. I have not a clue how you make that happen until I got this guidance. We create with thought, so that's the mind, and we see it manifest in the physical, our bodies, our lives, our relationships, our work, our lack, our plenty, but we're asleep. We think somebody's doing this to us, and we don't know or remember until we wake up that we are doing these things to ourselves that hurt. We've forgotten who we are. We have forgotten that we are God's children of the Most High. Some of our churches have taught us, created. the thought, the belief, the misconception, the lie that we are sinners, vermin, and have no right to call ourselves gods, that we are lower than a little caterpillar on the ground. Some of our families have taught us, created the belief, the thought, that we are worth nothing, will never amount to anything. You can add the words that maybe you grew up with. And we have let that thought create within us, take root in our souls, and owned it, and have created our reality, our lives, our pains, our illnesses, our sorrows, our destructive behavior, to prove they were right. So we have co-created with them what we are manifesting. Each thought we personally have creates, belief creates, doubt creates, hatred creates, and from that creation to our body, mind, and spirit, we see the results of our own creation. Our bodies we have created. God doesn't step away from us when we have these incorrect creations. God is right there with us. However, He doesn't add His co-creation to our incorrect creation, I don't believe. And the moment we're ready to stop creating incorrectly and co-create with Him, God probably sighs and says, at last, they finally are getting it. I really created a lot of slow learners. God created us in God's own image. Now what does that mean? He created and co-created every single one of you and millions of people in His own image, in her own image. Not just this earthly shell that we wear while we're here, however long we allow it to continue, but He created the soul that is in us, around us, all around us. We think the soul is inside of us. The soul is only partly inside of us. It's in every cell, every atom. It's all around us. It's extending out. So my soul's bumping into your soul. He created that for us. And He gave us magnificent temples to use while the soul is in residence. And what do? We create and all these things that cause us difficulty and then say, God, why did you do this to me? God, what have I done wrong that you would do this to me? I had a good friend, she is dead now, very famous writer. I would go visit her in her home. She'd call me and say, come out for a visit. And she would say, how can God do this to me after all the good work that I have done for Him? This woman was a chain smoker, a junk food, loved airplane food, wonderful person, but did not get it that she helped create the imbalances in her own body by her choices. You know, we'd like to blame it on somebody else. We had intuition even when we do those things that we're not sure are going to hurt us. Creation with pure purpose and intent is co-creation at its best because all creation begins with God. God lets us create alone when we don't ask for help or we think we have a better way. I frequently find myself doing things thinking that I know better than God. And when I screw up royally, which is frequently, then I say, oh, wait a minute, maybe God has a better way, and I meditate and tune in, and God always has a better way. So we're co-creators constantly, every thought, everything that we're doing. And so when we create alone, we don't always create the bliss that we came in to experience in our lives. But when we let God co-create with us, with our thoughts, our thinking, our feelings, then our lives are filled with bliss and we don't have as much struggle. It's not that we won't have difficulties, but we create peace. And there's a saying too in the Bible, be angry and sin not. It is okay to be angry. Some things need anger, but you don't need to sin by doing particular things out of your anger. After my time of meditation with God and my angels and listening, I began to co-create with every thought that I had. Every prayer that I prayed from that moment on, I asked God to co-create with me. As I blessed my family, I asked God to co-create their healing and their blessings. As I blessed myself and worked with healing myself, I asked God to be there and co-create with me. declaring over and over again that God and I are co-creating. And I think this is what the great pastor Joel Osteen does. And some of you I know listened to him this morning. He is so good. He is who ministers to the ministers here. Joel Osteen declares good over everyone, 20,000 people in his auditorium. He declares that you will be healthy. He declares life. He co-creates with God a positive energy that everybody there feels, and every one of us that watches it on TV feels that co-creating energy pour through us. So after I got this guidance, I knew without a doubt about how we co-create our lives with everything we say and everything we do and every touch that we make and everything that we write, everything that we do. And I heard again from the source of my life, God, you cannot make it right with everyone, and some relationships cannot be healed on this planet, this lifetime, just as Edgar Casey readings had said. And further I heard, why do some of you feel you have greater abilities to make it right for everyone when even the Master Jesus himself, our elder brother, could do no mighty works because of their unbelief, and would often have to shake the dust from his feet and leave a particular village and go elsewhere because of their unbelief, because they were using their free will to create disbelief and fear. Jesus couldn't make it right with everyone. Jesus was not a wimp. Have you ever thought about that? I remember when I was younger hearing, we want to become like Jesus. Then I got into Casey, and it was, we're all trying to work to become gods to other planets and other places. And I thought, I don't really want to be that kind of a wimpy person. Jesus was not a wimp. He didn't like or want conflict, but he spoke strongly his truth. And he was always in conflict with the leaders of the time and those who wished to destroy or harm him and stop him from trying to co-create with God, harmony among his brothers and sisters, and co-create peace on the planet. He volunteered, Casey said, to come to this planet to help this planet and the people on this planet. Out of their fear, he knew they might take his life, but he volunteered anyway. I think that's pre-birth planning. I don't think his death had to happen. My personal belief is he didn't have to die on the cross. If we had not done what we did to him, I don't think he had to die on the cross. We could have accepted it and gotten out of our fear. So you can make a case for him dying on the cross, and ministers do that all the time. But the people at that time had free will, and I believe Jesus constantly hoped, prayed, and tried to create love so that they could learn their lessons in a gentler way than most of us on the planet learn our lessons. And for generations since that time, we have had to learn our lessons in a less gentle way. Yet, you don't look to those lessons and truths about him. None of us do. And the letters WWJD, which are on bands, and I think it's wonderful, what would Jesus do, also can be misleading. What would Jesus do? Someone I love dearly sent me a message about a concern I had, WWJD, and I took that to heart. What would Jesus do in this situation? And I prayed about it, and this is the guidance that I got that I'm going to share with you. Jesus would sometimes speak out strongly, throw the money changers from the temple, speak truth, chastise when needed, call people on their acts and attitudes. Standing in front of Pilate and not speaking up was correct for that moment. That is not what he did all the rest of his life. That may have been a part of the soul contract he had. When we read the New Testament, and read the 82nd Psalm today, it's just so good, but you'll read others, not just the Psalms. Read the New Testament with a greater understanding of Jesus not being a wimp, Jesus in power, and who this man really was, and what he really did and said, and you'll begin to see a different truth about Jesus. You'll begin to see Jesus in such a way that it will empower you. And it's not necessarily what you've been taught in your old churches or any of that, but what you feel when you read the New Testament and see the promises of Jesus. You are God's. The works that I do you can do, and greater. God loves you with an everlasting love. Don't take one or two things Jesus did as what he always did or most often did, but what he rarely did under special circumstances. Plus, carefully use your own intuition to see what you feel his words truly mean. And whenever I read the Bible, Old or New Testament, I always say, God, what did you really mean? What was really meant here? Were these your words, or were these words of people that felt they knew what you meant? Reading sacred scriptures, sacred writings, calls for the strong use of our God-given intuition. And if we do that, we will see the scriptures and sacred writings in a totally different way. And we will see our elder brother Jesus in a totally different way. And then we can see how we really can become a God being like Jesus was. Just as what you've been taught incorrectly that Jesus said on the cross is one of those things. When I was young, I remember hearing this. On the cross, after all Jesus went through, he said, "Oh God, why have you forsaken me?" I remember 6 years old thinking, I don't believe he said that. I don't believe he said that. After all he did, why in the world at the last minute would he doubt? Yet we have heard hundreds of sermons preached on why he said that on the cross. Let me give you the Aramaic version. The translation with Jesus' language in the Aramaic is not, "Father, why did you forsake me?" but "Father, for this I was created." For this I was created. We need to look at different interpretations. We need to trust our own intuitive feelings. We need to understand that there are misinterpretations and that we can understand and learn what those are. I picked up Daily Word after my experiences with God and Jesus and my angels, and I turned to this. I thought this was really neat. Every time I pray, every time I have a realization of the Christ power within me, I awaken to my true spiritual nature. Early Christians told the story of Lazarus, who appeared to be dead to everyone except Jesus, who called him from the tomb. My Christ nature can transcend any appearance or condition and allow me to awaken unto a new life of oneness. Now, imagine someone in your family dies. They're dying. They're going to go to the morgue. What if you really knew the power within you? And what if, with prayer, you could touch that person, or you could touch their soul? And if it was divinely correct, they, just like Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, could be lifted up and could live again. We don't even try to do that kind of thing. I thought about when my son died. I wished I had known this. I wished I had gone to his body, and I could have tried. I don't think it would have worked because they didn't find his body for several days, or for a day. But the idea is there. There are miraculous things we can do of healing, resurrecting the dead, all these kind of things that we think only Jesus could do. We have the power within us as God beings to do those very things. And then I read this in Daily Word. I may have found comfort in a special blanket or a hug from a parent that loved me, and I may have a favorite song or time spent with friends who shared my interests. These will bring me an awareness of God's presence. I create my experiences by what I choose to give my attention to. A unity principle states it this way: thoughts held in the mind produce after their kind. Thoughts held in the mind produce after their kind. I am one with God, and in this oneness I co-create a life that blesses me and others. I focus on my strengths and divine faculties. With each positive thought, I become more aware of the creative power within me. I live life with intention and seek companions who are joyful and uplifting. And I take notice of the good within and around me, and my life is blessed. We think sometimes we have to stay in relationships that are so toxic that they're killing us, and we've done everything that we can, and we go, and we counsel many people like this. I need to stay in this relationship even though he is beating me, even though she is doing this, because karmically I don't want to have to meet this person again. let me suggest that perhaps getting out sometimes of toxic relationships, whether they're marital or whether they're friendships, releases the karma, and you stand up and use the power within you, and you won't have to experience that again. Only you can make that decision. I can't tell you what to do. But I think Jesus is saying to us, there is a power within if we will use it. So I want to read to you something that I found. This is a song. Do any of you know Barry Manilow's One Voice? Have any of you ever heard Manilow's One Voice song? I had never heard that. I subscribe to Daily Word, or not Daily Word, Chicken Soup for the Soul. And I usually delete them because I just don't have time to read them. But this one I kept keeping day after day, and it was called One Voice. And I read Barry Manilow's story. In his sleep, sound asleep, he was awakened, and he had the words and the music to this song called One Voice. And he was afraid he might forget some of it, so he ran down this long hall in his house, and he turned on the tape recorder, and he sang what he had heard, every verse into it. He woke up the next morning. He didn't even remember this had happened. But he was in his studio, and he turned on his tape recorder, and here came this beautiful voice of his singing these words. Just one voice, singing in the darkness. All it takes is one voice, singing so they hear what's on your mind. And when you look around, you'll find there's more than one voice. Singing in the darkness, joining with your one voice, each and every note, another octave, hands are joined and fears unlocked. If only one voice would start it on its own, we need just one voice facing the unknown. And that one voice would never be alone. It takes just that one voice. Just one voice singing in the darkness, all it takes is one voice. Shout it out and let it ring, just one voice. It takes that one voice and everyone will sing. It may take your voice to stand up and say those things that are not comfortable to say. It may take one voice to speak out against things that are wrong. It is easier to stay in the background and try to make it right with everyone. And that is not what we were created to do. We were created to bring as much peace as we can to this planet. But we were created to use our voice, to speak up when it is necessary, to right wrongs, to speak up against those things, to write about those things. I love it when I read the letters to the editor and someone speaks out, even when I don't agree with them. One voice can change everything. We are God's. We have the power to co-create with God. But we need to speak up for whatever that might be. The Messengers speak up in their music and their compositions that they do. Some of you that are writers like Mark Ireland speak up when it would be easier to be quiet. Some, like myself, write about things they don't want to share so that it might help someone else on their struggle. You may have a book in you that you know needs to be written. It's easier to watch television and do nothing. But your one voice can make a difference. You may have something you need to write. You may need to stand up for the whales, whatever it might be. Your one voice can make a difference. One person can make a difference. Especially when you really claim and know that you are God's, every single one of you, with unlimited power from your Creator to co-create with Him the kind of world that you want, the kind of person that you want to be, the kind of people that you want to pull toward you, the kind of community like this that loves and cares about each other. And so, this would be what I would say to you in closing. Go now and bless the world, you God beings. Wake up, accept your missions, and soar. Don't walk, soar. God bless you.
We must love God with all our heart, mind, and soul. And as we love ourselves, we must love our fellow man. This is the great commandment, and by its words we will surely stand. As we're searching for the truth within our soul, there are many words of wisdom that we may read. But if this one line is all we remember, then we'll remember all we need. At times we may be afraid to live, at times afraid to die. When love opens up our heart to Him, like an eagle we will fly. We will fly. We must love God with all our heart, mind, and soul. And as we love ourselves, we must love our fellow man. For this is the great commandment, and by its word